Wow. It is fired up on a Wednesday night.
Baby.
10
Behind the
o'clock.
scenes is going to be going up on the Patreon.
Holy moly. It's 10:15 Eastern. It's only 7 o'clock in the West Coast. So if you're watching from the West Coast, get some popcorn, get ready, sit down.
If you're on the West Coast, you're already too late. We're done rocking and rolling, baby.
Never too late for Shoot the Gap. This is Shoot the Gap. I'm Nate Markham. With me, Mike Wohlert, Hollywood Titan. Jorge's on vacation, kicking it somewhere besides with us. It's okay. We have enough fucking firepower to keep this train rolling until at least next Wednesday. Speaking of the trains, hear about this little potential work stoppage with the train unions. Yeah, big news. Not to go on a tyrant about something different, but if they don't agree here shortly, the railroad union could put a halt to transportation. Load up on your toilet paper, load up on your beer.
Oh, damn.
And load up on your IDP information. We'll start right here. This would be better than toilet paper loading up, hopefully. But I can tell you, guys, what a week one. I mean, It started off, unfortunately, with a bang, and that bang was in TJ Watt's pec. I think we all saw that. As soon as he left the field, we all read his lips collectively that said, I tore my pec.
Mm-hmm.
We hope he said something different. I wish I was good with those Mad Lib or the voiceover things where you can read their lips and it changes what they say. Unfortunately, news came out that he did tear, but guys, no surgery, could return in potentially 4 to 6 weeks. It's TJ Watt. What do you expect, Mike? Are we seeing a 4 to 6 week return?
I mean, possibly, but and I give it to him, but I think he's making it's a calculated risk because he could, if he's not getting surgery and he's just rehabbing.
Yeah.
I'm no whatever person who does stuff, pathologist, paleontologist, physical, not a paleontologist. I know.
He's
orthopedist.
An orthopedic surgeon.
I don't know. Can the risk of further injury is pretty high, I'd imagine. I don't know. It just doesn't seem smart.
Studies have shown a Velociraptor pectoral implantation is actually a 3 to 4 week recovery, and he would have 28 sacks with. Can you imagine Velociraptor pec in you? Fuck, he'd be monstrous,
oh, dude.
Jeesh. The opposite of a Velociraptor is Malik Reed. No offense, Malik Reed, but Hollywood, decent candidate though. I mean, you're talking about a team that's led the league in sack for 5 straight years. We saw what they did in week 1. Malik Reed on your ad list.
I think so, right? I mean, at this point in the season, everything's kind of set in place. Everybody's drafted everybody or hit the waivers right off the bat. So this is kind of a last-minute thing, right? Mm-hmm. Go back to 2020 with the Broncos. He had 8.5 sacks, I think it was. So a pretty good pass rush option. Excuse me. If you're expecting him to put up TJ Watt numbers, then that's just asinine, right? You're fooling yourself. You're full of shit, right? Pardon my language. But I think as a waiver wire option, a second, or even I wouldn't even say second, but I would go more comfortable with a third option edge or pass rusher. And we're going to get into that whole scenario. But I think as that third edge rusher, I think there's some value there. I think he can be a 7 to 10 sack guy for them. And especially right away with Watt being gone or out, I think there's some true value there. Y'all agree with me? Disagree? I mean,
hey, like I said, I don't doubt any pass rush option in Pittsburgh. They've pretty much proven to me that anybody you step. Look at Alex Highsmith last week. Did anybody? I mean, I'm not knocking Alex Highsmith, but Alex Highsmith stepped it up, and I mean the whole team did realistically. But the question is without TJ Watt.
Well, he got the sacks even before TJ Watt left, because Watt left. I think after Watt's gonna is like the sinking ship, rising tides, whatever that.
That's true. Yeah.
Whatever that saying is. But yeah, he left, so I think he had done his damage even before Watt left.
Oh, sorry, I missed. I was too busy on other pages to hear Sean's perfect example of, yes, it is an injuryologist. That is a person who studies injuries, according to Sean.
I'm not talking to Sean because I fired him last night.
Okay, well, then he's looking for
providing any questions to IDP Nation. He knows why. So,
okay, you fired Sean. I don't like Sean with just a stupid little S down here. Where's the what's the Guardians of the Galaxy? What's the guy's name from Guardians of the Galaxy? I'm embarrassing myself.
Star-Lord?
No, who's on his? It's his little avatar guy, the guy that whistles with the arrows.
Yandu.
Yeah, that's who's on there, if I'm not mistaken. See, I pay attention to Sean, unlike Hollywood, he fires them because I value our listeners. Like I value Stephen Motley, who wants to know, Hollywood, should I trade Patrick Mahoney for a Velociraptor? I'm going to guess.
You know what? I will.
Yes, yeah.
I don't know. The Velociraptor doesn't have the arm length to get the ball out.
He's a rushing quarterback.
He's
like
vicious, though.
Would you
short arms vicious?
Would Patrick Queen even be bad enough to get in the way to get eaten by a Velociraptor quarterback if he happened to be in the way? Is that a stat that
I think Patrick Queen. I think you want to put in like Alex Anzalone in those types of questions. Or Alex Singleton.
Alex, we're finding a bridge from Nathan Gary to Alex Singleton to Alex Anzalone. A lot of Alexes. Maybe that's the problem. Who's another Alex linebacker? And if that's the case,
Alex Highsmith.
Oh shit, Alex Highsmith down for a bad year this year. Sorry. And if we go even further, is there another one? There's not. I see no other Alexes. The linebacking group.
Quan Alexander.
That's close. That's close. I'll give you that one.
Yeah.
I'll give you that one. That's it. Let's move on to the next little piece of. There's a lot of injuries, so I'll speed through. Yeah. Denzel Perryman, the ankle injury that Mike is praying happened. I know Mike never prays for injuries, but that is just even more. No, but he doesn't. I promise. He's got good moral compass on him. But with him out, it's even less concerned with Diablo, which I didn't have any. Divine Diablo was calling the plays, had the dot before the injury, right, Mike?
Yep.
So
that is correct.
The last injury report had him as did not practice. The ankle, I'm not worried. I'm not worried about Divine Diablo. I worry about Denzel Perryman because I think we collectively all were off him anyway. A person I was on was J-Ron Curse, MCL sprain. Mike, is he looking to play this week?
I think he already got ruled out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Who wears the dot at when Curse left?
It was Malik Hooker.
Okay.
So still not a linebacker.
Ugh, man.
But Leighton Vander Esch played 85% of the snaps. So
and he actually tell me, am I crazy, Hollywood? Did LVE actually play well enough that they let Micah Parsons pass rush just a little bit more? Is that what you saw, or is that what I saw?
I mean, that's kind of what I was seeing, right?
That's what I saw, but then again, maybe I willed that on. Here's a question for you, Hollywood, because I think that you mentioned a little bit about him. Is Israel Mukwamu in line as the top replacement potential?
Yeah, I mean, the last report I saw was that if Curse is out, and it appears to be the case, right, that Mukamua is going to be next in line, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I would. That's so tough. I don't know that I would quite start him because the safety position is pretty damn deep, right?
Yeah.
And I think as the show goes on,
you got Donovan Wilson.
Yeah, I mean, as a whole, right? I mean, not just the team, but as a whole, I think we'll kind of get into this as the show goes on. So I don't think I'm starting him,
No.
but maybe if you're safety needy as a waiver wire pickup, maybe he's kind of a stash in case something happens. But I don't think I'm starting him.
So here's my little potential 2-cent piece on this matchup. Cincinnati, after a 7-sack week against Joe Burrow, if there's ever a time that I see them running the ball 30 plus times in a week and just feeding Joe Mixon to take some of the abuse away, is probably a matchup against a team like Dallas that has honestly no offensive chance of keeping pace with Cincinnati. If they run the ball 30 plus times, I think there's a chance that the safeties could have a play. I don't think I want to start them, but if I'm doing my rankings, I might move them up into that late DB4, DB5, which is not a startable unless you play in a league that you start 5 DBs. If that's the case, you're more degenerate than any one of us three. Probably definitely more degenerate than Devi IDP Grind, who thinks Hollywood is the shizzle. Clearly been drinking. They have we love you too, Hollywood.
Drinking drugs.
Drinking drugs. Hollywood, go ahead. I'll let you answer this one. I think they're making up names for me to try to butcher.
Yeah, they're on me tonight. That's okay.
That's okay. That's why you're here. And it is what it is. That's why we love the listeners, the followers, etc. You know what I don't love is that I saw Quay Walker leave during the game last week. But Mike, what are the early reports so far that you've heard?
He was back.
Perfect.
Back to practice. He was a 3-down guy before he left too. I think he was in on 86% of the snaps before he left. So, but yeah, he's back. So,
you think Green Bay actually sticks with an 86% with the linebacker too, like Quay?
I have no reason to believe why they wouldn't.
I don't know.
They like him. He was a first linebacker picked.
Yep.
Right.
So I don't see any reason why they wouldn't stick with that.
I like Quay. It is.
Oh, he had some good plays.
Derek Barnett for the Philadelphia Eagles. That defensive line is a rotation at best, if you'll call it that. Losing Derek Barnett is a bad one. Is it worse, Hollywood, for the actual defense, or is it just as important to your IDP, or were you avoiding pretty much the defensive lineman for Philly because of that rotation?
You know what? I think it's more of a hit on their actual defense than it is IDP, because the last couple of years he's just not been what we thought, right? Unfortunately, he got hurt. It looks like he's going to be out for the year because he's on IR with the ACL. And they immediately, as soon as they put him on IR, they signed Janarius Robinson, right? The rookie from not the rookie, but a former rookie from Minnesota. I think this helps Josh Sweat, right? I think his value is where it goes up here. If you've got him on your fantasy teams, the question is, are you cutting him, right? And I think there's some, being personal.
Oh,
a Tennessee Vol, I think you cut him because I think there's more valuable options out there that you can pick up right now.
Yeah. Hollywood says cut all Tennessee Volunteers from your team. And I got a little information on Frankie Lubumbashi. It was supposed to be Frankie Luvu, but his damn autocorrect went to Lubumbashi because we type in a lot of Lubumbashi. Is that like a dish? Is that like a Greek dish that sounds delicious?
I think they're talking about Frankie
Luvu. That's what it said. Right,
yeah, for Carolina.
Right here. See? Yeah. And we'll get to Frankie Luvu because I got to tell you, I have my, I don't know, I'm teetering back and forth. I want to believe in some things I've seen, and then I also get hesitant because of the things I've seen. Another thing we've seen is that Justin Simmons came up today, and that Nathaniel Hackett expects him to miss, quote unquote, some time. Hollywood, I think Caden Stern's value trending in the upright direction. Yes. Perfect.
I think so. Yeah, absolutely.
I
Um,
mean,
why would it not, right?
we're starting in any league.
I think if you're in deep leagues and you're hurting at safety, yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Um, kind of the I kind of want to tie it to Talanoa Hufanga,
Yeah.
Jalen Wright, Richie Grant. Some of those guys you've had to be patient on, right, for the last year or so. And whether it's an injury or just straight out, in Hufanga's case, straight out just better than anybody they have, it's starting to pay off. So it's unfortunate that Simmons has been hurt, but yeah, I think Stearns is worth a start. I think he has some of those big impact plays that can make it worthwhile for him to be on your roster.
Mike, are there going to be any, you think any suspensions or anything in place for Tracy Walker after he got ejected for throwing a punch? Have you heard anything or read
No,
anything
I haven't
about
heard
that?
anything. I'm not sure.
I haven't either. I'm going to assume, where there's no smoke, there's no fire. There's, I'd say a little bit of a smoke, like a positive in that Shaq Leonard returned to practice today. So, I mean, Mike, what do you think? Is EJ Speed and Zaire Franklin just both pushed to the wayside? There's no rotation of whatsoever.
No, they're
right.
They're replacement players.
Yep. Kind of replacement. Unfortunately, I hope that the Colts don't have to replace this player, DeForest Buckner. He appeared on the hit, did not practice today with a hip injury. They're saying it's not the best outlook for this week. And there's really not much behind him in that way. I mean, Grover Stewart is the, line up next to him. But I wonder how the effect on Kwity Paye without DeForest Buckner and what the effect on someone like a Shaq Leonard would be if you don't have someone eating up that middle. Mike, what are you doing with Shaq if there's no DeForest Buckner, or is there any effects as a result?
I mean, if Leonard plays, I'm starting him. I mean,
Right.
There's no. I mean, I'm not. It doesn't even register whether Buckner plays or not. Could he get some additional pass rush snaps? Maybe. But I'm still starting. I'm still starting Leonard, and I'm even probably still starting Paye.
Okay. Yeah, I'm really happy with Paye's week 1. I think I've been waiting for that to happen since last year. I want to move to a situation. I've seen mixed reports in New York. Jordan Whitehead, one place said that he was most definitely out, but I don't believe he's out. I think he's just still questionable. Mm-hmm. He didn't practice today. Hollywood, you like Ashton Davis to step in this situation if Jordan Whitehead's out?
Yeah, I mean, if Whitehead's out, as you go look kind of at their depth chart, I think Ashton Davis is the next guy up, right? It's worth monitoring to see what they do with Whitehead. But if he's out, I think, in my opinion, I think it's Davis.
Yeah, and that would make sense for me too. I know they brought in, I think, Will Parks recently, which again, I think that's just depth piece, if anything. Do we like? I mean, Ashton Davis had a couple weeks last year where he had some traction, but I mean, I personally don't think that there was anybody in that Jet secondary that I would necessarily look towards. I mean, they're playing Cleveland. Let's be honest. Cleveland, 39 rushing attempts last week. We know they're going to want to pound the ball because Jacoby Brissett's just pretty much garbage. Sorry, Jacoby. So, I mean, there's a chance. Like, I really wanted Jordan Whitehead to be in this game because even though he didn't play as many line of scrimmage snaps as I had wanted, I think that there was a chance that he was going to be of value. I don't know. Mike, any opinion on the Jets secondary?
No, I don't know. For whatever reason, they just don't register.
Makes sense.
On my radar. I thought Whitehead would have had a good season, but I don't know. There's just something about the Jets secondary just doesn't. I don't know. It just doesn't register. They're just kind of boring, and sometimes they don't. don't have points. I mean, May had a decent season last year, but
Yeah, exactly.
meh.
You're,
Very
yeah,
meh.
meh is the best way to explain that. We have a new segment this week. It's one of my favorite segments to talk about because I believe it's a true gauge. Now, granted, it's after your waivers have already run, so this is either going to be a build you up, or it's going to be a kick in the
Or
nuts.
we're gonna
we're
basically just we're kicking you right in the Jimmy there.
exactly. And so this is going to be titled Money or Mirage, and we'll take a look at each position or position by position, talk about some of the key pickups this week in Fab and waivers, and we'll see what we collectively think of the performance based off of last week and how we project them going forward. Will they be money for your team, or is it simply a mirage and you'll end up in a desolate island with no water and the mirage
And the collective IDP nation just laughing at you.
Correct, exactly.
Ugh.
Which is a very, very, I'd say, angry collection of people. It can be very, very heinous. And so let's start with Alex Highsmith. Alex Highsmith, obviously, we know the TJ Watt news is going to have a little bit of a bigger role there. But Hollywood, is Alex Highsmith going to be a money pickup, or is he going to be a mirage for fantasy players?
I think he's going to be money from what we're seeing last week, right? He's stepping into that number one role. Now becomes the lead edge rusher with Watt out. The question is, will he be productive as the top pass rusher? The opportunity's there. I think he's got enough pieces around him that he can be. Now, he's not going to be TJ Watt. Let's not get stupid here and say, hey, he's going to be the next TJ Watt. That's not happening. But can he be productive? Yeah, I think he can.
Gotcha. So just to clarify, being money does not mean you don't have to be TJ Watt to be money. If anybody's getting confused on our explanation, it is going to be no. I think everybody knows. Mike, are you money or mirage? Do you agree with Hollywood?
Yeah, I mean the opportunity's there. We like the snaps, we like the volume. Cam Hayward's still there, so there's still some attention on the interior. So he's going to be prone to his ups and downs like every edge rusher, but he'll have the opportunity.
Speaking of potential ups and downs in Tennessee, I think collectively I'll give this whole group a good high five. Rashad Weaver was a name that has been now mentioned pretty much. Mike wrote about it in his waiver wire article. If you don't, listeners do not subscribe to 4 for 4, do so now. We'll wait. And Mike will start writing these detailed little pickups of people like Rashad Weaver, who Hollywood we talked about last week. He led the preseason in pressures, also had 10 tackles. What does he do when he comes out? Picks up 2 more sacks. Had 1, but they turned 1 tackle for a loss into a sack. And I don't think we could be happier. So money or mirage going forward, Hollywood?
I think he's money, right? If this is Bud Dupree, we're talking mirage because, they lost Landry and now they lose Deshaun Hand. So, and the depth at the position is just garbage. It's trash, right? So you got Dupree kind of filling in for Landry. And now you've got Weaver. They moved Autry out, moved Tierra Tart or whoever in next to Simmons. With their lack of depth, I think it trends to Weaver, right? And seeing what he did week 1, I think there's bigger upside, bigger opportunity for him than there is for Dupree because Dupree's going into Landry's spot. So, if you're a Dupree owner, you're kind of like, you're kind of excited, but at the same time, you're kind of like, I don't know. With Weaver, what you've got invested in him, because you probably drafted him at the very least late round at the very least, or you picked him up off waivers. So I think with that value, I think it's all Weaver, and I think what he's shown, Vrabel really likes him. He's a guy that he has a lot of trust in. I like Weaver. Is he going to do what he did last week every week? Probably not. But
So he's
I
not going
think
to have
the upside's
36
there.
sacks on the season. Gotcha.
no, no, he's not.
So this, I will tell you, this is what I love about doing these shows, because in our comments, and I'll post this up because I do want to just bring it up, because number one, Kevin came on and wants to have a question answered, which is trade Antonio Gibson and Christian Kirk for CeeDee Lamb. And he has Aaron Jones, Joe Mixon, Cooper Kupp, Mark Andrews, Jalen Waddle, Chris Godwin. Good Lord, that team is stacked.
I don't know who any of these guys are, so I'm of no help.
Which is great, because this is Hollywood loves offensive questions. They're his favorite. And then, bam, straight slam, as if this is a dog out. Guy comes on and talks shit to him. Now, I hope they all know each other. And if they don't, they all know that it's in good fun, because that's exactly what we would want to bring out here.
They do.
I'm going to answer this from an offensive standpoint. I'm not taking CeeDee Lamb in that trade personally, because I don't trust Cooper Rush to throw him further than what Mike could throw Hollywood, or vice versa. But yeah. So what I do want to know, though, Mike, is from a money or mirage standpoint, Jordan Phillips, who could throw you a good couple feet from the size of that man, do you think he's a money or a mirage?
He's an interior lineman, so he's going to be kind of a mirage for me. I think he took advantage of what looks like a pretty weak offensive line, and
yeah,
it just, sacks from the interior are something you can't really count on. He hasn't been really known for his pass rush. He had an outlier season in 2019, but it hasn't come close to that over the last 3 seasons. So for me, he is a mirage.
And Hollywood, I know you play in a lot of defensive tackle leagues. I'm going to set this question up different, though. For the listeners that only play in defensive line leagues, is he money or mirage? Are you? Oh, Hollywood's not here. I wasn't looking at the screen. So, all right, well, he can hear us, but he's not answering. And so I'm sure it's something awesome, but it is a mirage. I agree. I love the interior. If you have a defensive tackle spot, sure. In certain matchups, I have no problem with that. I think that, like you said, the Rams interior line offensively is it's rough right now. They're trying to get it better. I think Andrew Whitworth loss is wreaking havoc on them. The question is going to be that Tennessee interior line. I don't know this week if I would even mess with them personally. I mean, there's no leagues that I'm starting Jordan Phillips in, but there are plenty of leagues that the aforementioned Frankie Louvu was possibly a big pickup. Mike, money or mirage?
Mirajani.
I like it.
One, he gave us the first oh crap, he's calling the plays moment.
Yes.
That was the first thing that I noticed. So 85% of the snaps you like, but you don't like the fact that he was missing tackles, so he was not taking advantage of the run snaps, and he was also playing on the edge. I believe it was about 21 snaps he was on the edge. So the edge, it's going to have an impact on his tackle floor and efficiency. So I guess if you're in a big play league, he's got the sack upside for sure. But I just want to kind of see how he's used before I can recommend him. I know linebackers are like the running back position, so everybody's linebacker thirsty. So if you need it, yes, pick him up. But if you miss out on him, I don't know if I'm necessarily angry about it.
Right. And I can make sense of that. To elaborate even further on what you were saying last week on run plays exclusively, he had a 42.9% missed tackle rate.
Well,
Uh,
he was trying to tackle Nick Chubb.
He was. And so the good
And
news
Nick
is
Chubb just makes everybody miss.
that is very, very true. Who does he play in week 2? Saquon Barkley.
Yep.
So
Yes.
I'm going to go ahead and guess that that's not going to be a good encore for Frankie Lubumbashi, which is what his name will be now. Frankie, and it's only going to be us that's going to know that. So when anybody else mentions it and they say Lubumbashi season, baby, it's only us Shoot the Gap fans
Mhm.
that are going to know what's going
Right.
on. So hopefully he, can. Hollywood, any difference? Or do you think it's possibly Lubumbashi season, or you go on the Miragini status like Mike did?
And until I see something different, I agree with Mike. I think it's a mirage, right? I know last year he kind of had a career season, right? 16 games, 4 starts, career high 43 tackles, career high 26 solos, 8 TFLs, 5 quarterback hits. But he didn't really do anything that showed me that he was going to take that next step, right? So to expect any more than what you saw last season, and I think that's crazy to expect any more than what you see last season that's the mirage, right? You
Yep.
see water, but when you get there, there's no water, right? You're still thirsting to death. So I think that's where Luvu is right now.
Yeah. And I mean, because if you jump on the PFF and you look at last year and you don't sort by minimum snaps, he's the number 5 linebacker on defensive grading. Number 4. And that's with a 54 tackle grade. So they know he's a shit tackler. They just think that he's a great he's got great pass rush numbers because he had 11 total pressures out of 71 pass rush snaps. So that's do the math there. 1 in every 7 roughly he's getting a pressure. So those things are things to keep in mind. But again, I'm not really getting too invested in the Luvu. The Luvu love. Permafrost is asking for trades. Holly.
I'll let you this with Luvu. He saw an 85% defensive snap count last week.
Mhm.
Granted, it's week 1. Don't overreact and all this. Does that? I mean, if you go back and look, he's never been above 45%, and that was his rookie year. So 45%, 8%, 28, 24. This year, through 1 game, he's 85%. Does that sway you in any sort of way with him?
I mean, what did we say earlier? We said, snaps should be the first thing that you focus on. And I mean, if anything,
Right.
if he's muddied into a group of other players, and maybe we'll talk about this next player coming up, because there are players that have opportunity now that maybe they won't have an opportunity later, a la Michael Walker. If it's in that same mix, maybe I stick with Luvu just because I think that there's potential for future gain. But yeah, I mean that's hard to say. Here's a question that we have. What do you think about Dominique Robinson, who last week, if I remember correctly, beat Trent Williams for a sack, which was, I mean, if you do that, go ahead and chalk that up to your I did that list and just retire. I mean, I'm not gonna say that's the only thing he did, but was that last week?
Yeah, he got a sack. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, held on to Trey Lance's towel, shirt, everything, and brought him down.
What do you guys think? I mean,
I like him more than Travis Gibson.
Do you?
Oh,
yeah.
Really?
I don't like Travis Gibson.
I mean, that says a lot to me.
I don't think he was very. I think the efficiency
Gibson had
is
what,
not sustainable.
7 to 8 sacks last year?
Yeah,
right.
I think it's an outlier season. I think he was just ultra efficient, and I don't see him carrying it over. So I didn't like him beginning. I didn't like him coming into the season.
Right.
Fair enough. If it's any consolation, the Bears played Robinson on 2 snaps more than Travis Gibson did. So, I mean, he got 28 snaps versus 26. I'm not going to say that that's the end all be all, but that's something of note,
Right.
personally. And I'm guessing we're still talking about Luvu. We will Luvu on. That's terrible, Nate. I forgive I'm sorry, everybody, for doing that. It's fucking terrible. I touched earlier Michael Walker. I didn't touch him necessarily.
I don't know touch him, but hey,
don't judge me. Don't you judge me. I'll do whatever the hell I want to do. But
keep it moving, Nate. Come on.
What do you think? 5 game after week 5. It's probably Deion Jones. I mean, are you still?
I don't know. I'm not
thinking?
confident. I'm not confident in that Deion Jones is going to just come in. I don't know.
That whole contract thing was weird too, right?
Yeah, they restructured it. It doesn't necessarily mean a good thing or a bad thing for Walker. I mean, makes the contract a little easier to trade.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. It makes it easier for the Falcons to move him, right? Because everybody knew in the offseason they were trying to get rid of him, trying to move him. No takers, of course, the contract. And then all of a sudden he's on injured reserve or IR or whatever. And now you get this. What was it, Mike? They added the 3 voided years and saved $8.5 million or something like that. I think it was.
They did a lot of voodoo Disney magic to just be like,
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes.
The salary cap isn't real. I don't care what you say. Salary cap is
right.
real.
So basically, they made it a little easier for them to move him, or for a team to say, "Okay,
Sure, we can take a shot on him."
It's more productive for us to take him on." So I don't know that that's going to actually be the case, but that's kind of where the move was.
I think with Walker, even if Jones comes out, you got some continuity. Why would you want to mess with the continuity?
Right.
Exactly.
That's kind of how I interpret how I'll interpret the whole situation.
Sean, you got fired once last night.
Yeah, don't make me fire you again tonight.
I give him full authority. It's like the neighbor that is watching your kids that back in the day, they used to be able to beat the shit out of you if you acted up. Now they can't. You had them, didn't you? You had a neighbor that you went over and played with, and if you screwed up, they had full right to whoop your ass, didn't they?
I was that neighbor.
Perfect. See? Exactly. We talked earlier with Denzel Perryman. So Devon Diablo, I think we're all 3 of us in agreement that is a money pickup.
Yep.
Right.
94%, Mike. 94% on the field. I could see Mike doing his dance while Devon was out there. Here's one that I think kind of came out of left field by any means, but it was really good to see this evolution immediate in week 1 is Talanoa Hufanga. And
came out of left field for me. I wasn't expecting it. San Francisco safeties don't tackle much. They don't score well, but he was just all over the field, snuffed out screens, got his nose in the dirt.
That's even crazier if you think about, if you go back and look with what Gruger Hill did, with what Kirksey did, with what Petrie did, and then you've got Jonathan Owens.
Yeah, but
so many freaking tackles. That was insane, right? I don't think you will see that again.
Snaps.
There's no way, right?
Yeah,
that's so many snaps. That's 2 games worth of snaps. Break that down into 2 games for KGH, and it's still, don't get me wrong, that's still 8 tackles a game, and he was targeted so much in the passing game. Probably unlikely, but you're right. I mean, he had 18 tackles. I think it was
18.
And then you had Kirksey with 8 or 9.
He had 9, 2 solos, but he had 9.
And then you had Owens with 13 or so. You had Petrie with 10 plus. That's just insane.
I personally, I don't change my opinion on Petrie.
Grugier Hill got targeted 16 times.
Correct. The most targeted person in the league last week at any position by 10. or 8. Yeah, I actually
13
am gonna
of
go
those
the
tackles came in coverage.
correct.
So,
And that was, I mean, I think it was Naheem Hines he had him 6 or 8 different times. He had to pay attention. I'm not knocking Jonathan Owens. I'm not knocking KGH. I'm not knocking really. I think Kirksey and Petrie are the two that I could see a sustained floor without the huge peaks and valleys. Personally, Sean makes a good point. Shockingly, is that I'm just kidding. Hufanga's big game may have been related to the weather, and that could be. They definitely kept everything within that 5 to 7 yards from line of scrimmage on all the offensive plays, and you didn't have Kittle, so not that was a huge factor, but not having Kittle, that storm, all that shit. It was a crazy game. I chalk up that entire game to nothing. I don't beat up Cole Kmet. I don't beat up
Fields
Fields in the
and rain isn't necessarily a problem. It's the wind usually, but usually, that was a lot of rain.
That was a lot of rain.
A lot of rain.
What about Marcus Williams, Mike, in Baltimore?
I don't know. Call me crazy. I have an issue with deep safeties getting all these tackles, and 60% of over 60% of his snaps were deep. Plus, again, the Ravens played 84 snaps. Exactly. So, again, I kind of Minkah Fitzpatrick has been the outlier for these deep safeties, but it's just I don't know. I with deep safeties, I try not to chase points.
Right, no, and that's fair. I mean, personally, in my opinion. In any of you guys' opinion, they went up about Marcus Epps. That's kind of my opinion, but
he's a guy. He's a streamer. He's a guy you can rotate in and out if you need it.
I like that. I have no problem with that analysis personally. I like it. It helps and it helps keep us moving along too, because there's one last.
Sometimes you just got to stop looking for guys that just aren't there just for the sake of bringing up guys.
Right?
Derek Forrest
they're on the wire they're on the waiver wire for a reason. If you liked him, you would have drafted him.
Yeah.
Yep.
And occasionally, some of those guys stick. It just can't be outlier reasons. 80 plus snaps, an injury to someone else. Speaking of injury, Cam Curl, Derek Forrest came in, stepped in, and played wonderfully. It was so. I mean, watching him play was incredible.
Yep.
I don't buy it for 1 second that he's going to be on the field enough to do anything once Cameron Curl returns. Am I crazy for thinking that?
No.
There we go.
I mean, the injuries allowed the volume, right? Even with the volume, I was kind of shocked to see the output, right? Or the production. I mean, somebody got stashed on taxi at best or whatever, but it's all about the injuries and Curl being out and him getting the volume. And maybe this is a 1 week wonder, right? Maybe this was the 1 week, if you were lucky, and I really challenge this, that you had him in your starting lineup and won, because I don't think you see it the rest of the season if Curl's healthy or whatever. But
I won't. I think that it is a fun story to watch. I think if Curl misses another week, I mean the hits that he put on, drawing the ball loose and just being around the ball at all times, fun. Right. If something happens to Cameron Curl going forward and that shoulder is not actually 100% or something reoccurs, then sure, I'm fine with maybe circling back to Derek Forrest. We'll table Derek Forrest for now, as they say in business stuff, because we're all, I'm sure, businessmen and things of that nature. But let's get past the money mirage, and now we're gonna look at going into week 2. Your plays or your fades, or your plays and your fades. Technically, I don't know why I put or. It's and, because we're doing both. And to recap last week, Trey Hendrickson was a play, only put up 8 points. Jonathan Greenard was a fade, put up 10 points. So win to the fade there. Shaq Barrett put up 7, but Hassan Reddick only put up 5. So I got the victory, I would say there, but it's not much of a victory because Shaq Barrett's 7 points were garbage. Cody Barton, Mike, do your obligatory dance. 29 points, looked really, really good. I think that
not in the beginning though. In the beginning,
No.
I was sweating. I'm like, I'm
sweating.
sweating, and I'm like, dude, you got to shed some blocks here, dude. You got to move. I was dreading like a 2 solo, 2 assist night.
I have to admit, I thought for both. I was like, man, because it just didn't look good. But again, that's why we don't watch and judge after one quarter. You gotta wait till it's end, until it's all over. But Cody Barton, great call there, 29 points. JOK only with 10. Unfortunately, Xavier McKinney killed all of us. He only had 8 points. This is Fantasy Pro scoring, by the way, too. So if you're a big play scoring or different, obviously you might get different results, but we're keeping it consistent and cohesive. And Trayvon Diggs put up 10. Again, nothing special with Trayvon.
And I missed on Xavier McKinney this week. I thought he would have a bigger week, and I freaking completely whiffed on him.
I did too. Don't feel bad. It happens to all of us. So let's not whiff this week. Hollywood, here's your redemption story, redemption game. Let's talk about defensive line, edge rushers that you're playing this week. Who you got?
I think my play for this week is Robert Quinn, right, for Chicago. Mm-hmm. With what we saw last week from the Packers O-line versus Minnesota, makes Quinn a must start for me. The Bears will try to replicate exactly what Minnesota did last week, and that should equate for a big game for them. Minnesota had 13 quarterback hits, 4 sacks versus Green Bay in week 1. If Green Bay can't fix that this week, I expect Quinn to have a solid game. I know he was kind of shut out last week, so to speak. But, man, Green Bay is offensively, Green Bay is kind of in trouble, right? The receivers are dropping balls, and they're missing pieces on the offensive line. Mm-hmm. The question was Danielle Hunter switching from defensive end to outside linebacker.
Didn't seem to matter.
Hunter, yeah, it didn't seem to matter, right? A healthy Hunter, he's that dude. And I kind of got lit up on Twitter on that, but that's another thing. But, I think even with Mike Gone, right? Quinn's the big guy. You got Stevenson, who stepped up last week. I think there's more issues offensively for Green Bay that they need to fix, which will allow Quinn to have a good game. So for me this week, I'm going to take Quinn. I think they're going to follow the same suit what Minnesota did, right? They're going to get after Rodgers, and because they're not scared of the receivers or anything like that. So I think that's the play right there.
Yeah. Real quick, Sean wants to know, are we avoiding the Rams safety trio? And I'll start.
Good question, because
is it a trio, or is it just because Jordan Fuller wasn't back to full health yet?
So
I think Fuller's third.
Fuller, Rapp, and help me,
Scott.
And Nick Scott.
Yes.
I know, but
Scott.
Once Fuller that's the thing. I mean, if Fuller's healthy, does that bump?
If you had to rate the 3, where would you go? Because I think I would go Rapp, Scott, Fuller. I think that's my 3 this week. Rapp, Scott, Fuller.
Yeah, I think Fuller is down on the depth chart.
I do too. I don't think he's healthy yet, personally. I think Nick Scott showed me the most last week, but
nah, I think he's still just a guy. And if you get stiff armed by a quarterback, I think you got to retire.
It's Josh Allen. I mean,
that's
so. What I'm hearing here,
it's still a quarterback.
What I'm hearing here, Rapp is the guy, right?
I mean, I think that would be the
for me. I think it
is in the loose sense of the word. Yeah, he didn't play very. I don't know. They all kind of just were looking around. I don't know.
They were just there.
Right.
It was a weird game.
Yeah, it was.
Of course, Buffalo's defense absolutely put it on that offense last week, right? I mean,
That was pretty ugly. Hollywood, who you
They
fading this
spoke
week?
him. Oh, who am I fading? Yeah, this kind of hurts because I think I'm fading Bud Dupree, right? We talked
Mhm.
about it. The Rams were only able to get to Josh Allen twice for a sack, and that's 2 sacks. But with the Titans' depleted group at the edge position, right? They don't have Landry. They've lost Deshaun Hand. Now I know he's not a big star, but that's a depth piece, so he's gone. I wouldn't expect a much better performance from Tennessee up front. Dupree played 47 snaps, which was 78% of the total versus the Giants, and only produced one fancy note play, and that was a strip sack fumble, right? So
Right.
I gotta imagine with the Rams kind of being pissed off, right? They just didn't show up last week. I think they got to be better this week. So for me, I'm fading Dupree. Now, with that said, Rashad Weaver, that's a guy that I would look at there.
Okay. Back-to-back weeks for Rashad Weaver potentially.
He's the
It
dude.
wouldn't
I
shock
mean,
me. He's
I
doing it.
kind of hate to toot my own horn here, but with the injuries, the lack of depth, with Vrabel's really belief in him, I think Weaver's the guy you're kind of chasing here.
Mike, how about we go linebacker position? Who are you bumping up a little bit at linebacker? Who are you happy to play?
I think my A1 start play this week is going to be Ernest Jones.
Nice. I love it. Absolutely.
No, but seriously, I'm going to go to Logan Wilson.
That's wonderful.
He's my LB6 this week. He's my LB6 this week. I really like the matchup for him. He had a solid start last week, 8 tackles, a defended pass. Didn't miss a tackle. The Cowboys' offensive line now is just seems to be in shambles. They're now starting Cooper Rush. So I think there could be a more of an emphasis on the run with Zeke and some dump offs to Pollard, some quick outs to Dalton Schultz. So Tampa's linebackers got 19 tackles last week. So I think Wilson is going to be in for a busy week. And my fade is Isaiah Simmons. I don't know. Whatever we saw in Clemson has been left in Clemson.
That's a mess, right? With him and
he doesn't look like he's reacting to anything. There were a few plays where just kind of he was there. He got put in a blender in coverage. I think they got to just stop the defensive back thing. Travis Kelce is tough to defend no matter what, but there were some plays where he just wasn't even close.
Right.
And it's just where he's playing is just limiting his tackle floor and his efficiency. And I'm benching him for now. I'm not touching him right now. He has to show me something.
Yeah, and I don't blame you. I think that's an easy fade. I mean, it's not easy for everybody because some people drafted him as their LB1. In all reality, there's some people out there that waited at linebacker and said, you know what, I'm going to take the Swiss Army knife Isaiah Simmons that I saw at Clemson that just didn't get the chance last year because pass coverage wasn't good, and he's going to work on that. And he's just too athletic, too versatile. He can't not be a positive, influence IDP wise. And we are all wrong so far on that. At least, they are all wrong. I had Simmons down further as the time went on that it appeared that he wasn't improving. But
when you play 6 positions, you have none.
Exactly right. It's exactly right. It's the best. Yep, it's the best way to put it. It's true. So I tell you, I have a defensive back, a person he plays one position extremely, extremely well. And if you have a cornerback to play, it makes it even more important. I love Kenny Moore this week. I do. I mean, if you look last week, again, that was just the beginning of a consistent floor that Kenny Moore can provide. Wasn't intended to rhyme, but it did it. Whatever. 6 solos and an assist. Last week, we noticed that Christian Kirk is definitely lining up in the slot more times than he's wanting to line up out at Z or X. He's not. This is not a knock on Christian Kirk, because I think Christian Kirk is a fine wide receiver. I don't think he's the alpha one on the outside that can beat one-on-one man coverage. And I think that they found him more in the slot role is more to his liking. And he is 100% drawn the ire of Trevor Lawrence in that role. And if you can give me Kenny Moore lined up with Christian Kirk with double-digit targets, I love that opportunity. I mean, Kenny Moore not only played in the slot, he had 28 snaps last week in the slot, 23 split out wide. I anticipate more in the slot. If we look at Jacksonville last year, granted, I know that was Urban Meyer's offense. It wasn't the same. Not trying to compare, but in those 2 weeks, week 10, he had 3 passes defensed, 5 tackles. In week 18, he had 10 tackles and a tackle for a loss. One more added little piece. Washington last year found success blitzing from the corners on Jacksonville to the tone of 5 pressures. I wouldn't be blown away if they don't blitz Kenny Moore just a little bit more this week, once, maybe 2 to 3 more times. And like, you know, Debbie says, it is a cheat code in quarterback required leagues. I mean, very rarely can you get a 7+ tackle floor with the potential for a couple passes defensed and the upside. The one downside about Kenny Moore is that he is the DB5 according to Fantasy Pros ECR, but I think in most leagues you don't have to worry about him being that high up. My fade this week is John Johnson III. Last week, Mike, you can probably fill in even more for me. Nothing stood out. Nothing about that game plan. He was, like you said, no defensive backs that stay deep do it for you, and that's understandable. And he was, deep on, I think, 99% of the snaps, if you want to call it that. 37 of the 52 is not 99. But in that time, I mean, sure, he had 4 tackles, but he wasn't targeted in the defense. I don't think he'll be targeted heavily this week. I think he's just a guy that when you look at, what is he, DB? He was 30, I think, is where I saw him last. I think he's right around 34. So he's right around that DB3. There's plenty of guys below him that I would move up. Richie Grant, we talked about earlier. Hell, even an injured J-Ron Curse. I'm joking about that, of course. But, yeah, John Johnson, I'm just kind of out on. So, I don't have the drop. Jorge does, as far as the Oklahoma drill. So
maybe a good thing.
It's not a bad thing not to have. I don't think we. sorry, Jorge. But last week it was Max Crosby versus Montez Sweat. Max Crosby came out on top.
And had the JOP.
Yes.
The big jump on pile.
I saw that. I saw your picture that you, or your GIF, whatever you guys want to call it. It was great. It was wonderful, man. He had probably a good 40-inch vertical over top, maybe 50. JJ Watt in only limited time still beat Joey Bosa. And our conversation about Bosa and Khalil Mack, if you had either or both of those two and you started them, you did pretty well on the week. Christian Kirksey outscored Zach Cunningham, and Brandon Jones put a dagger in Duggar. And this week, Mike, let's start with you for the defensive line. You have DeMarcus Lawrence going up against Hollywood's Daron Payne. So, Mike, what you got?
I think just Lawrence is in a good bounce back spot. The surprise was that he didn't have any pressures, so that was kind of surprising. But got him as my defensive line, my DL9 this week. And my question is I thought Cincinnati upgraded their offensive line. It didn't look like it.
They spent a lot.
So, and I know DeMarcus Lawrence is not TJ Watt, but I think he's as good, maybe better than Alex Highsmith. So I don't think he's going to repeat the goose egg. I'm starting him with confidence. Lyle Collins didn't give up a quarterback pressure, but he only graded at a 57 in pass blocking. So still not too good. He still got beat on blocks, but just, Lawrence just didn't get the pressure. But I'm buying into a big bounce back. So not a whole lot of unfortunately, not a whole lot of stats to to kind of back it up, but I think just Lawrence is just kind of in a good spot, a good bounce back spot.
Yeah, and it makes perfect sense to me. I like that matchup there. Hollywood, tell us a little bit about your Deron Payne matchup and why you think
so
that.
I'm kind of at a disadvantage, right? Defensive end versus defensive tackle. Payne for me is easily a top 10 D tackle this week. If you're playing in specific position leagues, can Detroit's O-line hold up against one of the league's best defensive fronts this week? And that's without Chase Young, right? He's out for the first few weeks. I know Jonathan Allen's kind of banged up. We'll see what that is. But Deron Payne had 3 quarterback hits and a sack last week of Washington's 10 quarterback hits and 2 sacks against the Jaguars. I don't know that Detroit's offensive line is much better, right? Because they gave up 6 QB hits, 1 sack to Philly. I just, that was one thing that kind of stood out to me. I'm like, oh, Chase Young's out. What are we doing here? Because that's widely considered a big piece, right? Chase Young is a big piece, and I've traded him everywhere. If you listen to IDP Nation, I just traded him last week. I traded Chase Young and Kyle Duggar for Khalil Mack, Josie Jewell, and a 3rd-round pick in 2023. With Blake Martinez on my team, and I missed him, I thought it was a good pickup to get Jewell, even though he didn't play. And we saw what Mack did this week. I'm kind of completely out on Chase Young. So he's going to be a hard sell right now, but that it is what it is. And the Lions did a nice job with their protection week 1, but can they repeat it for 2 weeks in a row, right?
Right.
Young's out. You still got Montez Sweat. You still got Jonathan Allen. You still got Deron Payne. Even though you've got a Casey Toohill or a James Williams Smith over there at that extra spot, Washington, Ron Rivera, they know what to do up front. So for me, I think Deron Payne, even as a defensive tackle, I think he outscores DeMarcus Lawrence easily this week.
Wow.
Easily.
Okay. All right. Well, I would say the one area that focus on too is that if he's lined up, if there's one offensive lineman on Detroit, it's Logan Stenberg is the one matchup, and he's at right guard. The Deron Payne did line up over right guard more frequently than other times, and so the 1 sack, the 2 hit, the 4 pressures allowed by Stenberg is a positive, I would say, for Deron Payne. I just still don't trust I like the DeMarcus Lawrence matchup. Like you said, these are 2 different positions, and from a defensive tackle spot, there's a good chance that he could get through. I mean, hell, Stenberg obviously last week was
now
rough
this is
at best.
Position specific, right? D tackle versus D end. Payne kind of has the advantage, right?
If it's specific, of course.
This is something that we kind of had behind the scenes. I'm kind of going back behind the scenes with Jorge. If you go in defensive lineman, right? And I can already see Mike's going to disagree with me here. I don't know. I'm still taking Payne over Lawrence because Lawrence hasn't really done jack shit for the past 2 years. I know he's had the injuries or whatever, but I know it's D tackle versus defensive end, and you're kind of playing the matchup. But for me, I'm still going to Deron Payne because I think the upside's there. Disagree with me, Mike. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong, bro.
I'm going to move in silence like lasagna.
We're going to move on.
I'm going to let the Sunday play things out.
Yep, and we shall see come Sunday. Let's see what the linebacker position has in store. And Mike, I know that you went first last time, so I'll give up my little take on.
Yeah.
I really believe that this is that it's a bounce back week. A lot of us got burnt last week, and a lot of questions came up. What the hell happened to Eric Kendricks? Where is Eric Kendricks? What's going on? Jordan Hicks was here. Eric Kendricks was so bad, and he was bad. And I think that that's a good reason to have faith in that last week's stinker is going to produce, I'd say, motivation for Kendricks, because I know he definitely doesn't want to have back-to-back bad weeks. Minnesota had him at slot corner last week. 15 snaps, by the way, at slot corner. You know how many he had in the entire 2021 season? 30. So I look at that as a positional disadvantage for him last week. I don't know if that was I don't know if it was entirely by design. I guess it has to be. They're not going to accidentally put him at slot, but I think maybe that's corrected. And if it's not, there's positives to be had from that. The most important thing is not him in the slot. The most important thing is that Philadelphia is the NFL leader in rushing attempts after 1 week, technically tied, but they're still number one. If we look at the last couple of years, Kendricks' key has always been excellent in run stopping. He was 7th last year in the NFL in run stops with 15th in 2020, and he was 6th in 2019. So consecutive each year, we see him excel at run stopping. Now, I know that that's not necessarily just the quarterback, which it does incorporate, but we've seen Philly have success last week with that. Let's talk about maybe the chance that he is at slot and he's at cover. And he's in coverage. He played 42 snaps in coverage last week. In those 42 snaps, he was targeted 4 times. He allowed only 1 reception, and he leads all interior linebackers this year with 1 pass defense. So he is tied for first with everybody else. But he should have had 2 personally.
You're reaching.
But he should have 2. But that just what I'm saying is that he along with Jordan Hicks has done something that no other linebackers have done, though. He has that blend of 100 tackle upside on the season, which is double-digit roughly potential per week, with the pass defenses that we look for. Again, like I said, last year, him and Jordan Hicks were the only 2 in the NFL that had 9+ passes defense and 100 tackles. So we know both potentials there. I think it's set up for a good opportunity for Kendricks to see that bounce back this year or this week.
What's concerning about Kendricks for me is he's never called the plays before, and this is his first year, and he's doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So is he not necessarily now in a position to make plays or to be in that position, because it's been Anthony Barr for the duration that he's been there. So that's been my concern for Kendricks. But I'm still going to play him no matter what. But anyway, I'm going to go into mine. I chose Fred Warner against the Seahawks. He's my LB17 this week, but I think I might be talking myself into getting him higher. Last week was just a friggin' slogfest. Yeah. It was just a mess of a game. But out of his tackles, he didn't miss any. In a wet and rainy game, he didn't miss any tackles. Games at home, so you're going to have more favorable conditions. Seattle allowed 12 tackles to the inside linebacker position yesterday. Monday night. Singleton getting 9 of those, and I'm sure Singleton probably missed 9 others. Mm-hmm. But the inside linebackers are getting the tackle attempts. So Rashad Penny's probably going to be involved again. Warner will drop into coverage. He had 24 coverage snaps against Chicago. Somehow these tight ends now in Seattle are the second coming of Tony Gonzalez. They're just scoring. But yeah, I think Fred Warner is in a good bounce back spot, and also tends to play well, a little bit more aggressive against Seattle. He's got 3 career sacks against the Seahawks, 7 total quarterback hits.
Greenlaw or Alzheimer is that second guy? It's
Greenlaw.
Okay.
Greenlaw got the majority. So, but yeah, 3 sacks, 3 career sacks against the Seahawks, 7 quarterback hits, 5 tackles for loss in his career against Seattle. So likes to play
Right.
those. Likes that AFC or likes that NFC division. So I like Warner. That's my guy this week.
Cool.
Yeah, there's no doubt. The nice thing with both of those two is that, again, if you have the luxury that you're choosing between the two, it's, I mean, that's where Hollywood, I guess, here's your thing. So we got Kendricks right now, who is the LB 12 according to Fantasy Pros ECR, and you have Fred Warner at 14. And if you only had the one to choose, what decision do you lean? I guess so we can always we'll leave it up.
Right. For me, I'm taking Fred Warner, right? I think he's the better overall player. I think he's got the better overall matchup. And I think with what you have invested in him, right? And I hate to say that. What you have invested in him, I hate to say what you have invested in a player dictates what you should do, right? And I think a lot of times that's the case with fantasy managers. But for me, I don't give a shit, right? I'm looking at production. And tell me I'm wrong, Mike. I'm looking at production. I'm looking at matchups. And that's kind of where I was going with the Greenlaw and Alshire.
Yep.
For instance, if take Warner out of this, if you've got Greenlaw and Alshire, where are you going, right? Well, I'm looking at how they produced. I'm looking at who they got. I don't really give a shit per se what I've got invested in it because I'm trying to win right now. So if I think it's Alshire over Greenlaw, then that's where I'm going to go, right? So
we're talking about two premier LB1s that you're probably splitting hairs over the course of. I'm going to say that I bet they're separated by less than.
I'm taking Warner because I think he's the better player overall, and I think he has the better matchup, even with a Greenlaw, even with a Alshire, because I think they got one of the better linebacker groups in the league. I'm still taking Warner because I think he's a tier 1 linebacker talent. Now, is he tier 1, 2, 3? Maybe not.
Right.
Is he tier 1, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14? And like we talked about on IDP Nation, I like to break the tiers at 14. Tier 1 is the top 14, 28, 42, whatever.
Yeah.
For me,
yep,
he's definitely tier 1. Now, he may be on the back end, but I like him more than I do a lot of the rest, especially with the matchup.
That's all you had to say. Matchup right there, because it's clearly not as far as the season totals, because you have to go back a couple years to find Fred Warner outproducing Kendricks. But who do you like at defensive back if you in a flex type spot, Hollywood?
Oh, man. I kind of feel I have to toot my own horn here because I kind of feel like I've been killing it the last year or so with safeties, right? So for me, my must play this week or whatever is Richie Grant versus the Rams. Atlanta needs talent everywhere. They're kind of talent deprived. But they did a solid job of drafting safety help the past couple seasons. And they have two new stars in Richie Grant, Jalen Hawkins, with a full complement of starting reps. Grant has shown that the production that everyone expected from him a couple of years ago, right? Week 1 versus New Orleans, 98% of the snaps, which is 60 defensive snaps overall. And he produced 10 total tackles, 5 solos, 1 QB hit, 1 PBU. The depth chart behind, and I hate to kind of group these guys together, but the depth chart behind both him and Hawkins is super thin, right? Eric Harris, he's had his opportunities. Dean Marlowe, he's nobody. Dean Pease is kind of tied into, hey, let's get young. So is Arthur Smith. Let's get our young guys in there. Let's roll with them, right? If you look, I believe the Rams will be a little bit pissed off, right? Because they got showed up and showed out on Thursday night, opening week, right? Against Buffalo. I think they're going to kind of put on a show, but I think that helps Grant and Hawkins because I think the Rams are going to kind of say, hey, we're still here, whatever. I think they're going to put on a show, and I think IDP-wise, Richie Grant is somebody you're going to want. 10 tackle guy. I think he can hit that number again easily. That's kind of my play for this week.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I think Richie Grant has been a lot of conversation, as far as what position prior to the season he was best suited in. We saw last week that was in a deep safety role. Definitely could see plenty of opportunities against the Rams. I'm going to go.
One question for you guys. Because I feel like this is a big question, right? And sorry for interrupting and going
you're good.
down the fucking rabbit hole here. Because I really value what you guys say here.
And what?
Jalen Hawkins, Richie Grant, right? Last couple years haven't done shit, right? Let's face it, they haven't done shit. Now you're coming into year 2, year 3. How huge is patience for rookies, right? We're kind of seeing it with Ashton Davis. We're kind of seeing it with Caden Stearns, right? We're seeing it with Talanoa Hufanga. I know we're staying with the safety position, but a lot of times you draft these guys and they don't produce immediately, right, as rookies, because everybody's they're the second coming of Jesus, right? And it don't happen that way. So
yeah, well, so
you got to goddamn pump the brakes a little bit and get these guys on your roster, taxi squads, whatever, and now you're reaping the benefits, right? Are you guys the same way, or am I wrong?
Well, people were concerned. He didn't really play safety last year. That was the thing. He played more. He played 200 of
it was 200 slot snaps.
Yeah. So I mean, it's like
and you're talking about Cisco, or you're talking about Grant, right?
Talking about Richard Grant. You're right. That's the thing. That's why it's like you can temper expectations, but it's hard to have expectations.
You go back to college, he played safety and corner. You saw the big plays out of him, right?
Right. I think that we need more than 1 week to see what we have out of him playing a pretty much a new role at a professional level. I think it's going to Richie Grant versus Jonathan Abram, which is who I'm looking at. I don't know if that's a fair matchup necessarily because I think Abram's
I don't think that's fair. I think that's a huge gap, right? I mean,
what
you're looking at an immediate starter with Abram versus a backup or secondary guy with Grant or whoever.
Yeah. Well, don't pick up a backup. Then pick a starter.
Well, right. But I think you got to be patient sometimes with your rookies.
Well, sure, but this isn't about how do you think he's going to finish the season. This is week 2 only.
Yeah.
So week 2 only.
Yeah, but we've seen the precedent set, right? We've seen the precedent with week 1. You don't think he's going to have.
I think he could. I don't think he's going to have Jonathan Abram week in week 2, who had 12 total, 9 solo.
10 tackles again this week easily.
Well, 7 to 10 would still be less than the 12 that Abram had last week. I like the fact that you give me a safety with the 12th most snaps in the box, still seeing 6 targets and only missing 1 tackle in a matchup to me this week. Personally, I think that all signs are pointing towards. I'm not going to say a replication from last week. I'll never assume 12
Right.
tackles, but
Right.
Arizona's. I want to believe the pressure that they saw last week from Kansas City was indicative of their line. They probably want to try to establish a running game to keep Las Vegas off the field.
Right.
And if that's the case, I'm leaning towards Jonathan Abram. Mike, what you got here? Because we are at, you got about thumbs up, thumbs down. What do you want? You want Abram or you want Richie Grant?
I'm partial to line of scrimmage safeties.
Yeah.
And I'm Abram. It is a little bit. I mean, if what we're going on this year with Arizona, safeties last week only had 7 total tackles against the Cardinals last week. So
Right.
I'm gonna still with Abram because he kind of is more a little bit of a linebacker. And if Perriman is out, you still have Jayon Brown, who is meh. So I'm probably gonna go with Abram just because he is a little closer to the ball. And that's what I like out of my defensive backs. I'm box bias.
That's fair. And to be honest, it's the Chiefs safeties. I don't expect scoring out of them hardly any given time. But I do want to thank everybody that tuned in, that chimed in, that had we got some new Lambouche. What did we say his name was?
Lambush,
What is going on?
whatever
What
it
is
was.
going on?
Loombosh, the Loombosh League, Lubumbashi. All right, that wraps it up. I can't go on anymore with Lubumbashi, but
It's almost
We'll
midnight on Eastern Standard
Exactly.
Time. I gotta hit the rack.
we'll see you next week.